For most people, Monaco is the last place on Earth where they would expect to witness a bomb attack. The tiny Mediterranean principality is famous for luxury yachts, Formula One racing, glittering casinos, and some of the world's wealthiest residents. It is a place where billionaires stroll along immaculate streets, expensive sports cars line the avenues, and violent crime is exceptionally rare. But on the morning of June 29th, 2026, that image was shattered in an instant. A powerful explosion ripped through the entrance of a residential building in one of Monaco's most exclusive neighborhoods. The blast echoed through the surrounding streets, sending terrified residents running for cover. Windows shook, smoke filled the air, and within seconds, what had begun as an ordinary summer morning became the center of an international criminal investigation. At first, witnesses had no idea what had happened. Some believed a gas line had exploded. Others feared a terrorist attack. Parents grabbed their children and rushed away from the scene while emergency vehicles flooded into the neighborhood. Then investigators made a chilling discovery. This had not been an accident. Someone had deliberately planted an explosive device. And according to prosecutors, the bomb had been remotely detonated at the exact moment its intended target approached the building. Whoever carried out the attack had carefully planned every detail. The victim, investigators believed, had not been chosen at random. He had been hunted. As authorities secured the area, paramedics treated 3 victims lying amid shattered glass and debris. Among them was a wealthy businessman identified by several European media outlets as Vadym Iermolaiev, a Ukrainian-born entrepreneur whose business career had long attracted controversy. Also injured were a woman who suffered life-threatening wounds and a child who was caught in the blast. The child survived with injuries that were not considered life-threatening, while doctors fought to save the woman's life. The attack immediately raised troubling questions. If the intended target truly was Vadym Iermolaiev, why attack him in the middle of a residential neighborhood? Why risk killing innocent bystanders? And perhaps most importantly, who would be willing to carry out such a sophisticated assassination attempt inside one of Europe's safest countries? Within minutes, Monaco's police sealed off the entire area. Bomb disposal specialists searched for additional explosives. Forensic investigators photographed every fragment scattered across the pavement. Every twisted piece of metal, every damaged vehicle, every broken window became potential evidence. Because the explosive device itself told investigators something important. This was no homemade firework. According to prosecutors, the bomb appeared to have been carefully assembled and remotely activated using electronic equipment. The sophistication of the device suggested planning, technical knowledge, and possibly assistance from others. Experienced investigators immediately began considering a disturbing possibility: professional criminals, organized crime, or perhaps even a contract killing. Authorities refused to classify the incident as terrorism. Instead, prosecutors opened an investigation into attempted murder, making it clear that evidence pointed toward a targeted attack rather than an act intended to spread public fear. That distinction changed everything. If this was an assassination attempt, investigators needed to answer 2 critical questions. Who ordered the attack? And why? As detectives interviewed witnesses, a timeline slowly began to emerge. Residents reported seeing an unfamiliar person near the building before the explosion. Nothing initially appeared suspicious. The individual seemed calm, patient, almost as if they were waiting for something. Then, shortly before the blast, that person disappeared from the immediate area. Moments later, the bomb exploded. At first, descriptions from witnesses varied. Some believed they had seen a man. Others were unsure. Security cameras would soon reveal that appearances could be deceiving. Investigators also examined surveillance footage from surrounding streets, parking garages, nearby businesses, and traffic cameras across Monaco. The principality may be small, but it possesses one of Europe's most extensive surveillance networks. Detectives knew that somewhere among thousands of hours of video footage, the attacker had likely left behind crucial clues. Meanwhile, investigators began examining the life of the apparent target. Vadym Iermolaiev was far from an ordinary businessman. Born in Ukraine, he had built a vast business empire through investments in real estate, industry, and international commerce. His wealth placed him among the region's most prominent entrepreneurs. But success had also brought controversy. Over recent years, his name had surfaced repeatedly in political and financial disputes involving sanctions and alleged business connections that attracted international attention. Although no evidence immediately linked those issues to the bombing, investigators could not ignore the possibility that the motive lay somewhere within his complicated business history. As forensic teams reconstructed the blast, another detail became increasingly significant. The explosive device appeared to have been positioned with remarkable precision. Its placement suggested the attacker understood exactly where the intended victim would be standing when the bomb was triggered. That implied surveillance. Perhaps days, perhaps even weeks. Someone may have been watching the building long before the explosion ever occurred. Someone who knew the victim's routine. Someone who understood precisely when to strike. As news of the bombing spread across Europe, international law enforcement agencies began paying close attention. A targeted bombing in Monaco was virtually unheard of. If organised criminals were willing to conduct such an operation in one of Europe's wealthiest and most secure locations, investigators feared the conspiracy could extend far beyond Monaco's borders. French authorities offered assistance. Explosive experts joined the investigation. International intelligence agencies quietly exchanged information. The case was rapidly transforming from a local criminal investigation into an international manhunt. But despite the growing effort, investigators still faced one overwhelming problem. They did not know who had planted the bomb. For nearly 4 days, authorities remained silent as detectives analysed surveillance footage, tracked vehicle movements, examined electronic evidence, and reconstructed the suspect's escape route. Then everything changed. Hidden among countless hours of security video, investigators spotted a figure they believed had carefully blended into the crowds before the explosion. At first glance, the suspect appeared to be an ordinary man. But the truth, prosecutors would later reveal, was far more surprising. The mysterious figure was not a man at all. According to investigators, the bomber was actually a woman disguised in men's clothing. Someone who had allegedly entered Monaco with a carefully planned mission before vanishing across multiple European countries. And soon her face would appear on one of the world's most recognizable international wanted notices. For 4 days after the explosion, investigators revealed almost nothing. Police officers worked behind sealed crime scene barriers. Surveillance footage was collected from streets, parking garages, apartment buildings, and nearby businesses. Digital forensic specialists examined electronic devices recovered near the blast site, while bomb experts carefully reconstructed the explosive mechanism piece by piece. To the public, it appeared as though the investigation had stalled. In reality, detectives were quietly assembling a picture of someone who had gone to extraordinary lengths to avoid being identified. Then came the breakthrough. Monaco's prosecutor announced that investigators believed the person responsible for planting the bomb was not the man seen in the first witness descriptions. It was a woman. And according to investigators, she had deliberately disguised herself as a man to move through Monaco without attracting attention. The suspect was identified as Anastasiia Berezovska, a 39-year-old Ukrainian national. Soon afterward, Interpol issued a red notice asking law enforcement agencies around the world to help locate and arrest her if she crossed into their jurisdiction. The publication of her identity marked a dramatic turning point. Until then, the bombing had been viewed as a sophisticated but mysterious assassination attempt. Now, investigators had attached a name and a face to the operation. Along with the red notice, authorities released photographs believed to show Berezovska. Investigators also published physical details that could help identify her. According to the notice, she has dark hair and a distinctive tattoo on her right arm, reportedly resembling a snake extending from the shoulder toward the elbow. Police warned that her appearance could have changed. She may have altered her hairstyle. She may have changed her clothing. She could even be travelling under false identification. Authorities urged anyone who recognized her not to approach her, but instead contact local police immediately. But the more investigators learned, the stranger the case became. Security cameras suggested that Berezovska did not simply arrive in Monaco, plant a bomb, and leave. Instead, detectives believe she spent time observing the neighborhood before the attack. She reportedly appeared near the apartment building on multiple occasions. Sometimes she lingered in public areas. Sometimes she remained seated in locations that provided a clear view of the building's entrance. To anyone passing by, she appeared to be just another visitor enjoying a quiet morning. But investigators now suspect she was doing something far more deliberate. She was watching, monitoring, learning the daily routine of her intended target. According to prosecutors, the placement of the explosive device demonstrated remarkable precision. The bomb was positioned where it would cause maximum damage when the target reached the entrance. Even more troubling was the method used to trigger it. Authorities say the device was activated remotely. That meant the person responsible did not need to remain beside the bomb. Instead, investigators believe the attacker waited at a safe distance, watching until the exact moment to detonate the device. It was an execution plan designed to minimize the attacker's own risk while maximizing the chances of striking the intended victim. The sophistication of the operation immediately raised another question. Could one person have done all of this alone? Monaco's prosecutor publicly acknowledged the possibility seemed unlikely. Constructing an effective, remote-controlled explosive device requires technical knowledge. Conducting surveillance without detection requires planning. Escaping across several countries requires preparation. Investigators began considering whether Berezovska was only one member of a larger criminal network. Someone may have built the bomb. Someone may have financed the operation. Someone may have selected the target. And someone may have arranged the escape. At this stage of the investigation, prosecutors emphasized that these possibilities remained under investigation and had not been proven. What detectives did know, however, was that the suspect's escape appeared to have been carefully organized. Investigators believe Berezovska left Monaco shortly after the explosion. Instead of remaining in the Principality, she allegedly crossed into neighbouring France before continuing her journey through Europe. Authorities traced a vehicle believed to be connected to the operation. According to prosecutors, it carried German registration plates. The vehicle reportedly travelled through Italy and several other European countries. Investigators believe this route may have been chosen deliberately to complicate efforts to track the suspect's movements. Each border crossing increased the difficulty of locating her. Each passing hour gave her more time to disappear. As Monaco's investigation expanded, police agencies in multiple countries became involved. German authorities reportedly assisted investigators by examining locations where the suspect may have stayed. Investigators searched for surveillance footage, rental records, financial transactions, and digital evidence that might reveal who helped organize the operation. Every hotel reservation, every rental agreement, every fuel purchase, every mobile phone signal, each represented another piece of an increasingly complex puzzle. Yet despite these efforts, one question continued to dominate the investigation. Why would someone carry out such a dangerous mission in Monaco? The Principality is known for extensive surveillance cameras, strict border monitoring, and close cooperation with neighbouring French authorities. For experienced investigators, this suggested confidence. Perhaps the attacker believed the escape plan had already been perfected. Or perhaps someone else had planned every detail long before the bomb was ever placed. The disguise itself also attracted significant attention. According to prosecutors, Berezovska dressed as a man to reduce suspicion. Investigators believe this may have influenced early witness statements, many of which described seeing a male figure near the building shortly before the explosion. Disguises have long been used in organized criminal operations because they create confusion during the crucial first hours of an investigation. If witnesses are searching for the wrong person, valuable time can be lost. In this case, detectives eventually uncovered the deception by comparing footage from multiple camera angles. Small inconsistencies in movement, clothing, and body language gradually led investigators to conclude that the suspect's identity had been deliberately concealed. The strategy almost worked. By the time authorities publicly identified Berezovska, she was already believed to be outside Monaco. The investigation had now become an international manhunt. Interpol's involvement dramatically expanded the search. Police forces across Europe received the Red Notice. Border agencies were alerted. Immigration records were reviewed. International cooperation intensified as investigators attempted to determine whether the suspect remained in Europe or had already travelled elsewhere. Still, another mystery remained unsolved. Finding the alleged bomber would answer only part of the case. The larger question was still unanswered. Who wanted Vadym Iermolaiev dead badly enough to organise such a sophisticated assassination attempt? To understand that, investigators needed to look far beyond Monaco's luxury apartments. They needed to examine the complicated life of the man they believe was the true target, a businessman whose career had placed him at the centre of international controversy, political sanctions, and powerful financial interests stretching far beyond the borders of Monaco. That investigation would reveal a history far more complicated than anyone had imagined. As investigators expanded their search across Europe, they reached an unavoidable conclusion. To understand who planted the bomb, they first had to understand the man they believed had been its intended target. Who exactly was Vadym Iermolaiev? And why would someone risk carrying out a sophisticated bombing in one of the safest places in Europe to kill him? At first glance, Iermolaiev appeared to fit the profile of a highly successful international businessman. Born in Ukraine, he built his fortune over decades through investments in construction, real estate, manufacturing, logistics, and commercial development. His companies became involved in projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars, giving him a reputation as one of Ukraine's wealthiest entrepreneurs. His lifestyle reflected that success. Luxury residences, international travel, business interests stretching across several countries. Like many wealthy entrepreneurs, Monaco offered both prestige and privacy, making it an attractive place to spend time. But behind that image of financial success lay years of controversy. Following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, governments across Europe dramatically increased efforts to identify individuals and companies suspected of maintaining business relationships that could benefit Russian interests. During that process, Iermolaev's name attracted increasing scrutiny. In 2023, Ukrainian authorities imposed sanctions against him, alleging that some of his business activities had maintained commercial ties connected to Russia and Crimea after Russia's 2014 annexation of the peninsula. Those sanctions placed him under intense public attention. It is important to note that sanctions are administrative measures and do not, by themselves, establish criminal guilt. Public reporting on the allegations has been accompanied by denials from representatives associated with Iermolaiev who have disputed claims that he knowingly supported Russian interests. Nevertheless, the controversy significantly changed how investigators viewed the Monaco bombing. A businessman, surrounded by political and financial disputes, naturally presented a far broader range of possible motives than an ordinary victim. Detectives began asking difficult questions. Could the attack have been motivated by business rivalry? Could it have involved financial disputes worth millions of dollars? Could someone have been seeking revenge? Or could entirely different motives exist that investigators had not yet uncovered? At that stage, authorities emphasized that no motive had been confirmed. Every possibility remained open. Financial investigators were brought into the case. Instead of focusing only on surveillance footage and explosive evidence, detectives also examined business records, corporate structures, international transactions, and known professional relationships. They wanted to understand not only who Iermolaiev had worked with, but also who might have viewed him as an obstacle. Major international business often creates powerful alliances, but it can also create powerful enemies. The challenge facing investigators was separating speculation from evidence. Thousands of successful business people operate internationally without becoming targets of violence. Simply being wealthy was not enough to explain an attempted assassination. Detectives therefore focused on identifying recent conflicts. Had there been legal disputes, commercial disagreements, threats, unresolved financial claims? Any event capable of providing a motive suddenly became relevant. Meanwhile, forensic specialists continued reconstructing the bombing itself. Their analysis reinforced one critical conclusion. This attack appeared highly selective. The explosive device had not been placed randomly. According to prosecutors, it was positioned and remotely activated with careful timing, suggesting the attacker expected the intended victim to arrive at a precise location. That level of accuracy implied planning. Whoever organized the operation appeared familiar with the victim's routine. Perhaps someone had conducted surveillance for days, perhaps even longer. Investigators now considered whether information about Iermolaev's movements had been obtained from public observation, or from someone much closer to him. Did the planners simply watch him, or did someone provide inside information? Authorities have not publicly identified evidence supporting either possibility, but detectives reportedly examined both scenarios during the investigation. As news of the bombing spread internationally, media coverage quickly expanded beyond Monaco. The story was no longer only about an explosion. It had become a case involving international business, political controversy, sanctions, and an alleged contract-style assassination attempt. Each new headline increased pressure on investigators. Monaco's reputation as one of Europe's safest jurisdictions was also at stake. A successful targeted bombing in the Principality would raise uncomfortable questions about security. How could someone transport a sophisticated explosive device into Monaco? How could the suspect conduct surveillance without being detected? How had the attacker managed to escape so quickly afterward? These questions extended far beyond the identity of the suspect. They challenged investigators to determine whether this operation had been carefully coordinated by multiple individuals across several countries. Prosecutors repeatedly stressed that the investigation remained focused on evidence, not assumptions. Although the sophistication of the bombing suggested careful planning, authorities had not publicly identified any organization responsible for directing the attack. That distinction remained important. A professionally executed crime does not automatically prove the involvement of organized crime, intelligence services, or any specific network. Investigators continued following the evidence wherever it led. Another significant challenge involved separating public speculation from verified facts. Because Iermolaiev had previously appeared in news reports concerning sanctions and international business, numerous theories quickly circulated online. Some claimed geopolitical motives, others suggested financial disputes, still others proposed personal revenge. But investigators cautioned against drawing conclusions before evidence could support them. In complex criminal investigations, early assumptions often prove incorrect. For detectives, every theory required verification. Every claim needed evidence. Every timeline had to be reconstructed with precision. While financial investigators examined the victim's background, technical experts continued studying the bomb itself. The device remained one of the strongest pieces of physical evidence. Its design, components, triggering mechanism, and construction methods could potentially reveal where it had been assembled, or even identify individuals with specialized knowledge. Bomb makers often developed recognizable techniques: the type of wiring, the choice of explosive material, the electronic trigger. Even small construction details can sometimes connect separate investigations across different countries. Whether that would happen in the Monaco case remained uncertain. Still, investigators believed the explosive device might eventually reveal as much about the planners as any witness testimony. As detectives worked across multiple lines of inquiry, one reality became increasingly clear. This investigation was no longer confined to Monaco. It had expanded into an international operation involving law enforcement agencies, border authorities, forensic laboratories, and intelligence sharing networks across Europe. Finding Anastasiia Berezovska had become a top priority, but locating the suspected bomber would not necessarily solve the case. Even if she were arrested, investigators would still need answers to several critical questions. Who recruited her? Who financed the operation? Who built the explosive device? And who ultimately decided that Vadym Iermolaiev should die? Those answers, prosecutors believed, might lie somewhere beyond Monaco's borders. And with Interpol now leading a multinational search, the investigation was about to enter its most important phase yet. By the first week of July 2026, the investigation had expanded far beyond the borders of Monaco. What had begun as a bombing outside a luxury apartment building had evolved into a multinational search involving law enforcement agencies across Europe. Investigators were no longer looking only for the person who allegedly planted the explosive device. They were trying to uncover an entire operation, one that appeared to have required careful planning, technical expertise, and a well-organized escape. At the center of that search was one woman. Following the evidence gathered from surveillance footage, witness interviews, and forensic analysis, Monaco's authorities formally identified 39-year-old Ukrainian national Anastasiia Berezovska as the primary suspect. Interpol responded by issuing a red notice, requesting that police agencies around the world locate and provisionally detain her if she was found. Although an Interpol red notice is not an international arrest warrant by itself, it serves as a request for cooperation between member countries and can significantly expand the reach of an investigation. Suddenly, border officers, immigration officials, and police departments across dozens of countries were watching for the same name. According to investigators, Berezovska had already left Monaco before authorities publicly identified her. Prosecutors believe she crossed into neighbouring France shortly after the explosion, avoiding immediate detection. From there, investigators traced what they believe was a carefully planned escape route. Evidence suggested the suspect travelled in a vehicle carrying German registration plates. The route reportedly continued through Italy before extending into several other European countries. Authorities have not publicly disclosed every location examined, but prosecutors confirmed that investigators were working closely with foreign law enforcement partners to reconstruct the suspect's movements. Each country represented another layer of the investigation. Security camera footage had to be reviewed. Border crossings had to be analysed. Rental records examined. Hotel registrations compared. Vehicle tracking data collected. Mobile phone records scrutinised where legally available. Modern investigations often rely as much on digital evidence as on eyewitness testimony. A single toll booth camera, a fuel station receipt, a mobile device connecting to a nearby cell tower. Any one of those details could become the missing piece investigators needed. Authorities also began searching for possible accomplices. From the beginning, prosecutors questioned whether one person could realistically have completed every stage of such a complex operation alone. Someone had allegedly conducted surveillance. Someone had transported and positioned the explosive device. Someone may have built the bomb. Someone may have coordinated transportation. And if investigators were correct, someone may have ordered the attack in the first place. At the time of this investigation, authorities had not publicly identified any additional suspects or announced charges against anyone else. But they made it clear that the inquiry remained active. The bombing itself continued to provide valuable forensic evidence. Experts carefully examined fragments recovered from the scene, hoping to determine exactly how the device had been constructed. Explosive components can sometimes reveal surprising information. Specific electronic parts, manufacturing methods, commercially available materials, even microscopic traces left behind during assembly. Every detail was documented. Every fragment was catalogued. Because in investigations like this, physical evidence often speaks louder than speculation. Meanwhile, detectives continued to examine the background of the apparent target, Vadym Iermolaiev. His international business interests, past legal disputes, financial relationships, and publicly reported sanctions remained part of the broader effort to determine a possible motive. However, prosecutors repeatedly emphasized that the investigation had not established why the attack occurred. Despite widespread media speculation, no official conclusion had been reached regarding who may have ordered the bombing or what motivated it. That distinction remains critically important. Criminal investigations are built on evidence, not assumptions. Throughout the case, authorities have carefully avoided drawing conclusions that could not yet be supported by verified facts. For investigators, there is a significant difference between a theory and evidence that can stand in court. As the days passed, another challenge emerged. The longer a fugitive remains at large, the more difficult the search can become. Appearances can change. Travel documents can be replaced. Digital devices discarded. Support networks activated. Every hour increases the possibility that valuable evidence may disappear. That is why international cooperation became essential. Law enforcement agencies throughout Europe continued sharing intelligence in real time. Financial investigators traced possible transactions. Border authorities monitored travel records. Forensic laboratories compared evidence. Each agency contributed one piece of a much larger puzzle. Still, many of the most important questions remained unanswered. Who planned the assassination attempt? Was the bombing the work of a single individual, or a coordinated criminal conspiracy? Was the motive financial? Personal? Political? Or something investigators have not yet uncovered? As of today, prosecutors have not publicly answered those questions. The investigation remains ongoing. No court has determined guilt, and while Berezovska has been identified as the primary suspect through the current investigation, she has not been convicted of any crime. Under the principles of criminal justice, she is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. That reminder is more than a legal formality. It reflects the reality that complex international investigations often evolve as new evidence emerges. Witnesses come forward. Digital records are recovered. Forensic testing produces new results. The story investigators believe today can change tomorrow if new facts are discovered. For the people of Monaco, however, one fact is already beyond dispute. The bombing shattered the long-held belief that violent, targeted attacks could never happen in one of the world's safest and wealthiest communities. It exposed vulnerabilities few imagined existed, and it demonstrated that even behind the elegance of luxury apartments, super yachts, and glamorous casinos, dangerous conflicts can cross international borders without warning. Somewhere, investigators believe, the answers already exist. Perhaps hidden inside surveillance footage that has not yet been made public. Perhaps inside encrypted communications. Perhaps within financial records still being analysed. Or perhaps inside the testimony of someone who has not yet decided to speak. Until those answers emerge, the Monaco bombing remains one of the most intriguing international criminal investigations of 2026. A carefully planned explosion. A suspected assassin disguised as someone else. A wealthy businessman with a complicated international profile. An escape route stretching across Europe. And a conspiracy that investigators believe may extend far beyond the woman whose face now appears on an Interpol red notice. For now, the search continues. And somewhere beyond Monaco's glittering coastline, detectives are still trying to answer the question that has haunted this case from the very beginning. Who was really behind the bombing? Only time and the evidence will decide.